Your comment history may be revealing more than you realize. LexisNexis had a data breach, ironically. More political news. Welcome to Surveillance Report 227, where we are dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news from the past week. I am Nathan from The New Oil.
And I'm Henry from Techlore.
Our sponsor this week is EasyOptOuts. For those of you who don't know, EasyOptOuts is a data removal service. They're one of those services that you can sign up for and they will automatically scan people search websites for your data and request that they take it down. They are very affordable, only $20 a year. Cancellation is easy, refunds if you are not satisfied, and they are very effective. There's been studies from Consumer Reports, privacy guides, lots of evidence to say that they are very effective. They ask for very minimal information. You do not have to give any information that isn't already publicly available. They're just trying to make sure they have the right record. There are only 2 employees, so they're not sharing your data with lots of employees and third-party contractors. There are no ads or analytics on the website. Removal requests are only submitted if they find your data. So they're not like some of these services will just spam out your data to all these websites and say, hey, please remove this person. And then if they didn't have your data, they do now. So EasyOptOuts first makes sure that you're actually on that website, and then they request a data removal. And they are constantly adding new websites over time, and they offer business plans if you own a business or in a position where you can offer that as a perk. Of course, we do want it to be noted that doing this manually is the best way. You can make sure to check all the little niche websites because none of these services get every single website out there, but these automated services really do go a long way. These things can at very least come in and get the low-hanging fruit or maybe catch some of the things you may have missed. We are really big fans of these, and we're really big fans of EasyOptOuts. We really appreciate their support, and definitely check them out if you have not yet. That'll take us into the highlight story. So first up this week, a developer has built a tool that scrapes YouTube comments and uses AI to predict where users live. So the service is called YouTube Tools, YouTube-Tools, and it is the latest in a suite of web-based tools that started as a site to investigate League of Legends usernames. Now it uses a modified LLM created by the company Mistral to generate a background report on YouTube commenters based on their conversations. The developer claims it's meant to be used by the cops, but anyone can sign up. It costs about $20 a month to use, and all you need to get started is a credit card and an email address. The tool presents a significant privacy risk and shows that people may not be as anonymous in the YouTube comment section as they may think. The site's report is ready in seconds and provides enough data for an AI to flag identifying details about a commenter. The tool could be a boon for harassers attempting to build profiles on their targets, and 404 Media has seen evidence that harassment-focused communities have used the developer's other tools. The writer of this article says, to test the service, I plugged in a random YouTube commenter into the system, and within seconds, the site found dozens of comments on multiple videos and produced an AI-generated paragraph about them. So here's what the AI said. Possible location/region. The presence of Italian language comments and references to X Factor Italia and Italian cooking suggests an association with Italy. Political/social/cultural views. Some comments reflect a level of criticism towards interviewers and societal norms, e.g. comments on masculinity, indicating an engagement with contemporary cultural discussions. However, there is no overtly political stance expressed, unquote. Personally, that's really vague, and I would want to see some of these comments, but whatever. So according to the site where this tool is hosted, it has access to 1.4 billion users and 20 billion comments. So the data set must not be complete because YouTube has more than 2.5 billion users. YouTube Tools launched about a week ago and is an outgrowth of LOL Archiver, which is again for League of Legends. There's also Nhente Archiver, which can give you a comprehensive comment history of a user on the popular adult manga sharing site. Kick Tools can produce the chat or ban history of a user on the streaming site Kick, that's Kick, not Kik. Twitch Tools can give you the chat history for an account sorted by timestamp and sortable by the channels they interact on. So again, Twitch. Another very, very popular service. I wonder who has more, League of Legends or Twitch? But either way, it's probably more than those other two. So yeah. When the journalist reached out to the developer to ask like, hey, what do you do to prevent abuse? Like you say, this is only for cops. How do you enforce that? This is what they said. To prevent abuses, we only allow the website to people with legitimate purposes. And then the author asked how the site vets users. They said, we ask the users to accept our terms of use and do targeted KYC requests to people we estimate have an illegitimate reason to use our website. If we find a user does not have a legitimate purpose to use our service according to our terms of use, we reserve the right to terminate that user's access to our website. KYC, for those who don't know, is know your customer. I'll talk about that more in a second. And then the author says, I asked them about possible privacy violations the tool presents, and the developer acknowledged they're real. Quote, but we try to limit them during our vetting process. Again, this is the author. Again, I was able to sign up for the site with a credit card and an email. I was not vetted. Kind of a straightforward story, but also kind of a bit to unpack here. For the veterans in the crowd, you're probably sitting here like, no kidding, this is obvious. And especially with the rise of AI and data scraping, like these things will continue to be a bigger threat. But I think for anybody new here clicking on this video, you may not be aware that over time, you can let little things slip here and there that add up to reveal more than maybe you meant to reveal. One interesting thing that I didn't include in the show notes here, but was in the story, is the author asked, like, when was the last time you removed somebody and why? And the developer was like, oh, we noticed somebody was using a throwaway email address, so we banned them. So he's really not taking a proactive approach here. He's really not doing any KYC, which is, basically turn over an ID. Let me verify you are who you say you are. Again, 404 has seen evidence that this has already been used to harass people. I think all that's kind of pretty straightforward at this point. The takeaway here, and the reason we want to bring this to people's attention is, again, for those who don't know, who may be new here, this is something that you can do without realizing it. And therefore, I'm a really big fan of services like SID, which is claw back your data, or Redact, which SID only works on Twitter, but it has the advantage of being open source. Redact works on a lot of other services, but it's not open source and it is a paid service. But, there's tools out there. There's also a lot of free GitHub scripts, but you really have to know who the developer is, trust the developer, or know how to read code. We're definitely not going to tell you to just go out and find random GitHub scripts that haven't been updated in 2 years that claim to do this kind of stuff. But the point is, there are things that can take down these comments. They're not foolproof because there's things like, archive.org, the web archive. It could have already been caught up in a scrape at one point. But I think the real defense here is just to be mindful of what you're posting. I'm not going to say never engage online. We certainly have a public presence, but at the same time, be mindful of what you're putting out there and just try to think very carefully about that and be proactive, because it's a lot easier to not put that information out there in the first place than to take it back, which is something we have said many times.
All really good takeaways. Yeah, if you're new to the podcast, I think people don't really understand the sophistication of these tools. And when you kind of see all the stories we cover consistently on this podcast, you get a much more critical look at how sophisticated these tools become and how it's not actually that paranoid to think, oh, wow, actually they probably are scraping quite literally everything on the internet nowadays. And there's a lot more incentive to do so because of AI. So not only is AI make it easier to scrape and actually make the data useful, but it also trains AI. So it's this really positive feedback loop of scraping and using for more AI to scrape more, etc. And so it's not just YouTube. We covered Discord not too long ago and kind of ways that you can abuse the Discord API. Essentially, we're probably both going to be on the same page that unless something is end-to-end encrypted within a private context, and what do I mean by that is not end-to-end encrypted in a matrix room with 100 people that you can't keep track of. I'm talking like you and your family members have a private signal group that's end-to-end encrypted. That is currently still a safe haven. We're still following that closely because as more AI tools get baked into operating systems on the local level, that might become less and less true. But fortunately, that hasn't been a thing yet. And we even saw things like Windows Recall is actually completely excluded from Signal, and Signal is very proactive about that. So hopefully we can continue to have a safe space to communicate. Always have in mind what's private and not private when you're communicating. And it's not always just what has end-to-end encryption. It's also the context of how easy it is to scrape messages, who's in a group chat, what you're saying, etc. I think it's all I have to add there. And now we're going to go into data breaches with a very ironic beginning, which is the data broker giant LexisNexis says their breach exposed personal information of over 364,000 people. So if you haven't heard of LexisNexis yet, they are just this massive data broker company that collects data across pretty much all mediums. They're very much linked to car insurance companies, but they also are embedded in so many other third-party services. So they have disclosed this data breach that impacts all these people, and they said that this dates all the way back to December 25th, 2024, and they allowed a hacker to obtain consumer sensitive personal data from a third-party platform used by the company for software development. The stolen data varies, but includes names, date of births, phone numbers, postal and email addresses, social security numbers, and driver's license numbers. It's not immediately clear what circumstances led to the breach. Richmond said LexisNexis received a report on April 1st, 2025 from an unknown third party claiming to have accessed certain information. The company would not say if it had received a ransom demand from the hacker. So this data breach goes all the way back to December 25th. They weren't even aware there was a breach until April 1st, 2025.
Adidas warns of data breach after customer service provider hack. This is the week where none of our data breaches actually said anything useful. Adidas has yet to reveal further details regarding this incident, including the name of the impacted service provider, when the incident was detected, how many individuals were affected, and if its own network was compromised during the attack. When Bleeping Computer reached out to Adidas with questions, a spokesperson said that the company had no further update. And here's basically the update they did give: is earlier this month, Adidas disclosed data breaches impacting customers in Turkey and South Korea who contacted the company's customer service center in 2024 or earlier. The company in these breaches includes names, email addresses, phone numbers, birth dates, and addresses. Adidas added that stolen information did not include the affected customer's payment-related information or passwords, as the threat actors behind the breach only gained access to contact.
I'm not super sure how to say this. Naukri exposed recruiter email addresses. So this is a popular Indian employment website, and they fixed a bug that exposed the email addresses of recruiters using the platform to hire talent online. Apart from India, the site exists in the Middle East as naukrigulf.com. And there really isn't any more information. The article didn't specify what or how many people were impacted.
And last but not least, ConnectWise breached in cyber attack linked to nation-state hackers. ConnectWise is a Florida-based software company that provides IT management, remote monitoring and management, cybersecurity, and automation solutions for managed service providers and IT departments. No details were given, but allegedly this goes as far back as August of 2024.
And now we're going to go into companies, and we're going to start with X/Twitter, who has hit pause on their encrypted DMs feature. So they said on Thursday that it's pausing encrypted DMs as it's working to make some improvements. In a post on X, the engineering account said users will be able to access their existing encrypted messages, but they won't be able to send new ones. It did not mention when the feature will be available again. The company rolled out the encrypted DMs feature in 2023 for verified users, but it comes with several drawbacks, like it isn't available for group chats and only supports encryption for text and links and not media. It also does not offer protections against man-in-the-middle attacks, and your encrypted conversations do not carry over to new devices.
And then this last one is actually a good news update. We have those from time to time, which is why you should stay subscribed. Flock has decided not to use hack data in people search tools. The surveillance company Flock, which does automated license plate readers all around the country, in case you were not aware, here in the US, told employees at an all-hands meeting on Friday that its new people search product Nova will not include hack data from the dark web. The announcement comes a little over a week after 404 Media broke the news about internal tension at the company about plans to use breach data, including from a 2021 Park Mobile data breach. It says break, but I think they mean breach. Quick pause for those who weren't here last week, I think it was. Flock, again, is an automated license plate reader company. The cameras are everywhere. They're in parking lots. Usually if you see the little, it looks like a generator with a big pole that has a camera on it, and it says, "This is for your safety." It's not. It's for Flock to scan your license plate and know you've been there. They also partner with police and a bunch of other people, and they said they were going to design this software called Nova, which was basically, so right now, police can get the license plate, but then they don't have any other data attached to it. Flock was trying to combine all that in one. So as soon as it scans the license plate, it would automatically pull up whose car it is and all that kind of information. And they were going to use a bunch of different sources, including public records. I think, what was it, like social media, like scrape data or something. And then the third category that was super controversial was data breach stuff. So this is the update, is following the all-hands meeting immediately, Flock published details of its decision in a public blog post. It says it's designed to, quote, correct the record on what Flock Nova actually does and does not do. The company said that following a, quote, lengthy intentional process, unquote, about what data sources it would use and how the product would work, it has decided not to supply customers with dark web data. In Friday's all-hands meeting with employees, a Flock executive said that it was previously, quote, talking about capabilities that were possible to use with Nova, not that were necessarily going to be implemented when we use Nova. And in particular, one of those issues was about dark web data. Would Flock be able to supply that to our law enforcement customers to solve some really heinous crimes, like internet crimes against children, child pornography, human trafficking, some really horrible parts of society? We took this concept of using dark web data in Nova and explored it because investigators told us they wanted to do it. Then we ran it through our policy review process, which, by the way, this is what we do for all of our new products and services. We ran this concept through the policy review process. We've vetted it with product leaders, with our executive team, and we made the decision to not supply dark web data through all the Nova platform to law enforcement at all.
And now we're going to hop into research. Apple Safari exposes users to full screen browser in the middle attacks. So this one's pretty technical, so I'll do my best here. So there's a weakness in Apple Safari web browser that allows threat actors to leverage the full screen browser in the middle attack technique to steal account credentials from unsuspecting users. This abuses something called the full screen API. And what this does is it instructs content on a web page to enter the browser's full screen viewing mode. The problem is hackers can exploit the shortcomings to make guardrails less visible on Chromium-based browsers and trick victims into typing sensitive data in an attacker-controlled window. So this is from SquareX. Their team has observed multiple instances of the browser's full screen API being exploited to address this flaw by displaying a full screen BITM, which is a browser in the middle, window that covers the parent window's address bar, as well as a limitation specific to Safari browsers that make full screen attacks especially convincing. So if I'm understanding this correctly, Nate, let me know if I A, got this right, and B, if this makes sense. They're essentially going to give you a window that looks like it's the main window in the front, essentially, but you're actually engaging with a different window on your screen that is malicious. Is that?
I think so. That's kind of the impression I got, is they trick you with some kind of like phishing attack or something into opening a window and it's in full screen. The issue is that Safari is the only browser that doesn't have a very obvious like pop-up that says like you are in full screen mode. It just has like a really subtle gesture. And so it's really easy to not realize that's what's going on. But meanwhile, it basically functions the same as any given phishing page. You just don't realize it.
Crazy stuff. And I mean, from the article, yeah, the way the article describes it. So it opens a remote browser on top of the victim session. And since the login process happens in the attacker's browser, the credentials are collected, but the victim also successfully accesses their account unaware of the theft. It still requires tricking the victim into clicking on a malicious link that redirects them to the fake site, so it still requires that phishing attack in the first place. There is some hope here. Firefox and Chromium-based browsers show an alert whenever full screen is active. Although many users may miss the warning, it is still a guardrail that lowers the risk of this, but on Safari, there is no alert, and the only sign of a browser entering full screen mode is a swipe animation that can be easily missed. So they contacted Apple with its findings and received a won't fix reply. The explanation received being that the animation is present to indicate changes, and that should be enough.
That'll take us into the politics section. So first up, the US is storing migrant children's DNA in a criminal database. So the United States government has collected DNA samples from upwards of 133,000 migrant children and teenagers, including at least one 4-year-old, and uploaded their genetic data to a national criminal database used by local, state, and federal law enforcement, according to documents reviewed by Wired. Spanning from October 2020 through the very end of 2024, the records show that Customs and Border Patrol swabbed the cheeks of between 829,000 and 2.8 million people, with experts estimating that the true figure, excluding duplicates, is well over 1.5 million. That number includes as many as 133,539 children and teenagers. These figures mark a sweeping expansion of biometric surveillance, one that explicitly targets migrant populations, including children. The DNA samples are registered in the Combined DNA Index Data System, or CODIS, a database administered by the FBI, which processes the DNA and stores the resulting genetic profiles. A network of criminal forensic databases, CODIS is used by local, state, and federal enforcement agencies to match DNA collected from crime scenes or convictions to identify suspects. Of the tens of thousands of minors whose DNA was collected by Customs and Border Protection over the past 4 years, as many as 227 were 13 or younger, including the 4-year-old mentioned. The Assistant Commissioner of Public Affairs at CBP tells Wired, quote, "In order to secure our borders, CBP is devoting every resource available to identify who is entering our country. We are not letting human smugglers, child sex traffickers, and other criminals enter American communities." Under current rules, DNA is generally collected from anyone who is also fingerprinted. According to DHS policy, 14 is the minimum age at which fingerprinting becomes routine. The Department of Justice has defended the mass collection of DNA at the borders as necessary for solving crimes. In its official rationale, the agency argues that this sweeping effort is essential not only for identifying migrants who may have committed crimes in the past, but also for potentially solving crimes they might commit in the future. The DOJ did not respond to multiple requests for comments, nor did it answer questions about how long DNA samples are stored.
Airlines are selling your data to ICE. This is a massive aviation industry clearinghouse that processes data for 12 billion passenger flights per year. And it's selling that information to the current administration amid the White House new immigration crackdown. What this includes is full flight itineraries, passenger name records, financial details, which are otherwise difficult or impossible to obtain for past and future flights, but it's now being fed into a secretive government intelligence operation called the Travel Intelligence Program, TIP, and provided to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and other federal agencies. So, privacy and travel industry experts interviewed by The Lever said that law enforcement's access to such a vast database with little information on what privacy or other restrictions are in place raises serious civil liberties concerns. When a passenger buys a flight through a travel agency, including via common online booking sites like Booking.com or Expedia, the transaction is fed through the airline's reporting corporation, which acts as an intermediary between travel agencies and airlines. So although most airline passengers have never heard of the ARC, there's a good chance that their data has, at some point, passed through the company. Its data set includes information on 54% of all flights taken globally. Consumer advocates have already been concerned about the monopoly that ARC has established over this data, And because no other comparable financial clearinghouse exists in aviation, there's no alternative for travel agencies or consumers to use instead. In a statement to The Lever, a spokesperson for the company said that the travel intelligence program was established after the 9/11 terrorist attacks to provide certain data to law enforcement for the purpose of national security matters and criminal investigations. They declined to answer questions about whether clients outside the US government have access to the data. So it's not just ICE that has access to the data. The Department of Defense in 2017 signed a contract with the ARC for airline ticketing and reporting data, and the Department of Treasury signed a contract in 2020 for travel intelligence program software.
This next one I think is kind of loosely related to a story we covered last week. It says, reject all cookie button must be present and visible, German court says. Website operators must offer a clearly visible reject all button on the first level of the consent banner for cookie consent requests if an accept all option is available, explains the Safety Commissioner for Data Protection of Lower Saxony. Consent banners may not specifically encourage consent and discourage the rejection of cookies, the Hanover Administrative Court stated in its reasoning for the ruling. The court recognized several cookie banner layouts and designs as violations, such as making reject cookies more complicated than accepting them, pressuring users to consent by constantly repeating banners, misleading users with the heading optimal user experience and the label accept and close on the close button, not making the number of partners and third-party services involved apparent, and hiding consent withdrawal and information about third-party data processing. So again, for those who weren't here, last week we covered a story where some EU-wide court, I can't remember who, basically said that cookie consent banners are not adhering to existing privacy regulation and are therefore illegal. And so I think this is Germany just kind of defining that a little bit more clearly for their region.
Yeah, and I'll take the last couple because they're pretty short. The first one here is Texas adopts online child safety bill opposed by Apple's CEO. And this is actually one we talked about quite a while ago, which is it requires app stores to verify users' ages and secure parental approval before minors can download most apps or make in-app purchases. Alphabet said it was assessing next steps, and Apple said it values child safety, but expressed concern that the legislation would unnecessarily erode personal privacy. The second story is the EU is proposing a new mass surveillance law and is asking the public for feedback. So this is a signal boost. If you are qualified, I wouldn't spam it. We're not telling you guys to spam it. But if you're qualified, then you have good feedback to share. There's a feedback period that goes until June 18th. We always leave the sources in the description, so check that out if you want to leave any feedback.
Next up, we have FOSS, and there's only one quick story in here. It comes from Calyx OS, who has added 4 new Motorola devices to their supported list, and those are the Moto G 5G 2024, the G34 5G, the G45 5G, and the G84 5G. If you're curious why those phones, they do explain in the blog post.
Right, and now we're going to go into the Misfits. So cops are arresting a third suspect accused of brutally torturing a man for Bitcoin riches. So police have arrested a third suspect linked to the most extreme Bitcoin-related kidnapping and torture cases in the U.S. The arrest came after an Italian man escaped a luxury Manhattan townhouse after 3 weeks of alleged imprisonment. Running to a traffic agent for help, he later told police that he was tortured by colleagues for his Bitcoin password, bound with electrical cords, and whipped with a gun. His feet submerged in water while a taser gun sent jolts through his body. At times, he feared for his life. Allegedly once held suspended from the ledge of the 5th-story building, but he seemingly never gave up his password, a resistance that only prompted more extreme violence. Police raided the townhouse and found photos depicting the torture, as well as several guns, a ballistic vest, and broken furniture. 2 butlers on site agreed to be interviewed. Cops soon after arrested 2 suspects, but were still seeking an unapprehended male. As cryptocurrency holders fear online hacks, a growing trend of storing wallet keys on physical devices that cannot be hacked is likely driving the assaults. As Bitcoin's value has recently hit record highs, it has only further incentivized the thefts. Sometimes criminals locate targets through data breaches targeting cryptocurrency exchanges, and earlier this month they noted at least 5 crypto-related abductions, some involving severed fingers, over a few months in France, as well as cases where family members were targeted. A lot of these might be related. There was a Florida man suspected of leading a criminal ring intent on robbing cryptocurrency riches through a string of home invasions across multiple states. Some criminals are so bold to attempt assaults using toy guns. There is an article that I'll leave down below, and I'll paste this here for Nate to put in the show notes. It's from a security organization, and it's actually a really good article that a friend sent to me from a different privacy org that I work with about different precautions you can take. if you are in a situation where you feel like this is something that might impact you.
And then our last story is a really quick, interesting one from Bruce Schneier. It says surveillance via smart toothbrush. So take this with a grain of salt. He says the only links are from the Daily Mail and the Mirror, who are not the most reputable of organizations. He says, but a marital affair was discovered because the cheater was recorded using his smart toothbrush at home when he was supposed to be at work. We'll leave you guys on that one. That's all Bruce Schneier wrote. But again, he's got the links to both of those articles in his post if you want. And that is down in the show notes. And that's all the news we had for this week. So your comment history may be more revealing than you think. Be mindful of what you post online. LexisNexis ironically had a data breach, a bunch of political news, and more. It was a short but busy week. And now I will let Henry read us out on the sponsor segment.
Yeah, so EasyOptOuts is the sponsor and very happy customer in my personal life. And actually, I recently had a family member I was talking with and they signed up with a different provider. And I'm like, well, you know, other providers are fine. They're not going to do more harm than good, most likely, but EasyOptOuts just makes a lot more sense. So even with people in my life, it's definitely my go-to recommendation. And what I told them was, hey, like, it's easy to cancel. It's only $20 a year, which is cheaper than even some other services' monthly rates. And they asked for very little information. We know the two guys who run it and it's just them. There's no sketchy like relationships that they have with the data broker industry, which is some of these other providers. They also don't mass spam everything. So some providers will literally just get your information and send it to every single data broker out there, even if they don't have your information. So they actually scan everything, see if it's there, and they have all the systems in place to just take care of it just like that. And I really also appreciated the fact that there are a few of them that they don't do that are still really critical, and they send an email to you and they tell you exactly what to do. And so they really like walk your hand through like the last few things that they can't take care of automatically. So super helpful tool. And if you have a business and you want to offer this as a business plan, they do that as well. But overall, I've just been super happy. It's very just running in the background. I never think about it. They never spam you with like extra offers or anything like that, which is something I've had to deal with with other providers. So honestly, just there is no other service I could recommend more than them right now when it comes to people searching data removal services. So check them out down in the description. And I really want to give them a big thank you for sponsoring our podcast, because it's just always great when we have a service that overlaps with exactly what we'd want to recommend anyway. And we can't do it without their support. So thank you.
Thank you guys for listening to Surveillance Report. Links to all the stories can be found in the show notes. And if you have a story you think that we should cover, please send it to news@surveillancereport.tech. Some of our stories do come from you guys, especially the ones that are outside of Europe and the US. And we really appreciate you guys keeping us updated on things all around the world, because we do have a pretty significant global audience. It's not all Americans, so very helpful.
Aren't we? We're majority. Like US is the biggest country, but it's not more than 50%. So there's more people global.
The final thing we want to ask for you guys is to please share the podcast around. Again, we do not do any traditional marketing. We don't pay for any ads. And honestly, a recommendation from you to one of your friends would be more effective than an ad anyways. So if you know anyone you think might benefit from the show, please share it with them. Make sure you're subscribed so you always get new episodes. Give us a rating if you're on a platform where that's an option. We are trying to reach as many people as possible with the message of privacy, and you can help us do that. So thank you again for listening, and we'll be back next week with some more news.